Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on HITRUST Secrets. This episode is all about artificial intelligence, and we're joined with Stephen Dufour of Embold Health and Jason Core of the HITRUST Alliance, and they will be talking about their experience with the AI Security Assessment, which is one of the brand new or one of the brand new HITRUST assessments. So it'll be very interesting to see. Before we get started, I did want to recognize today, September 11th. So I just want to recognize the 24th anniversary of the attack on the nation. And then I also want to recognize the attack yesterday on our nation as well. So everyone in here in the United States is in my thoughts and prayers, and we will recover and become stronger from this. But all right, so let's go ahead and get started. Definitely wanted to have Stephen and Jason introduce themselves and kind of give, an overview of their experience with high trust assessment leading into doing this AI security assessment.
Sure. So I can start off. Um, so back in 2020, I joined in Bold Health amidst like COVID, right? So I had never worked on high trust before, never even heard of it. We were at the tail end of our original R2 assessment, and we had a ton of corrective action plans, which was very interesting to watch everything play out. So fairly new organization, went through the first assessment with a very, very small and well-defined scope, and maybe 40, 50 employees at the time. And then as the organization matured and grew, so did our high trust assessment. So originally we were on version 9.3 R2 and eventually upgraded all the way to our current version, which is 11.3.2. So we expanded our scope to include our systems that didn't exist previously. So again, as the business grew, so did we. And then also eventually, I think it might have been a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, we added AI to one of our revenue streams. And we also checked that box that said NIST AI risk management framework. And it's been fun, challenging, but definitely a good learning experience.
Oh, yeah, I started High Trust in 2016 as an assessor, doing readiness work. Those were in the days of version 8. Um, Worked for a number of assessor firms. Spent the longest at Coalfire, where I ran a big practice. We submitted nearly 100 assessments a year for 3 years, including some of the biggest and most complicated high trust assessments in the market. Um, Left the external assessment game for a while, where I was a virtual CISO for chiefly high trust compliant organizations. Did that for 2 years, and then about a year ago landed here at High Trust. I'm on our innovation team. I work on some of the new and exciting stuff that High Trust is doing, and at the time that I joined, a big part of that was this new High Trust AI security certification. So a big part of what I do and have been doing over the last many months is overseeing the adoption of this new offering.
Perfect. So, Stephen, you said it was you checked the NIST AI. So, is the high trust assessment really focused kind of singly on the NIST AI assessment? And maybe Jason, you can kind of talk through like what else it includes.
Yeah, so it's two separate certifications. So for our R2, it's just one of those factor boxes. And this, I believe, is one of the first that came out with an AI risk management framework. So like here's AI and here are the various elements you need to take into account whenever you're doing your overall risk assessment. So the separate HITRUST AI security certification is very, very specific. Like here are the things you need to look out because you chose to use some sort of AI system, which includes risk management for, portions, but it also includes things like audit logging and monitoring. I believe encryption as well. I want to say there's 43 controls. Like nobody else would know that but me, but there's 43 controls in our particular assessment.
All
Yeah,
right,
right on. Right
and to
on.
be
So
clear, there's two different types of AI assessments. There's using AI as an organization, and then there's embedding AI into your solution. And I'm assuming Embold is the second security assessment, right? It's in the application.
Correct.
Okay.
So for the organizational AI usage, where we're really talking about third parties and how we either casually use or as an organization embed AI into our operations. We treat AI just like any other tool. It has risks that come with it. Like some risks are bigger than others. So we just use third-party risk management. Mostly for that, we'll do SOC 2 Type 2 reviews, have an interview with the vendor. The thing that we're seeing more often now that AI is being adopted across various enterprises, like from the standpoint of third-party risk management, is various entities turning on AI elements, like within your tenant without your knowledge. You'll get a notification that something is going to occur, but sometimes they say it's on by default, and it's just like I don't want AI training or even being available to my end users who use this tool.
Hmm.
Really bad example is Adobe, right? Adobe has various elements of AI throughout all of its products. Another one is Atlassian, and I believe Slack rolled out one maybe last month where, as an admin, you can log in and unslide that rule to disable AI on the back end. From a product standpoint, yes, the AI security specification is specifically for
Okay.
AI-driven product.
Products. Yeah, and to your point on the AI kind of coming into the end users realm before administrators have the opportunity to stop it. I was giving at the HITRUST Collaborate conference last year. I went up to the Microsoft guy afterwards, and I was like, all about risk management, but Copilot, just comes up and goes, "Hey, we've got a whole new thing. You want to as an end user?" And I'm like,
Yep.
"Don't let it do that, please."
I didn't know you were there. So were you there
Mhm.
on the football field as well?
Yes. Yeah, I don't
Oh,
play football, so
I was there. You might have seen me like throw the
probably.
football at
Yeah,
somebody. That was a good time. Lots of
I was.
good talks. David Holding, I think his name's David Holding from Microsoft. Like he's
Hmm.
head of like the HIPAA compliance division or
Yeah,
something
something.
like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yep. So yeah, he was in a breakout session or something, and I went up at one of the Q&A times, and I was like,
Oh, I was following him around between his speaking engagements, like having my paper in him. Like, what about this? What about this? What do we do? And he's like, just add me on LinkedIn and you can
yeah, maybe,
ask all your questions
maybe
there.
that's why they're not doing Collaborate anymore. He's like, no, never mind. That guy.
Steve was bullying the
Steven was like,
speakers.
yeah.
But it's
So
a great place to ask questions because I've been on
it was.
I was on a panel with Microsoft a couple of years ago, and after the panel I asked them because it had to do with third party questionnaires, which just don't I could go on a tirade for quite a while on that. But I was chatting with Microsoft. I'm like, surely you guys don't have to do this. What did you use to get? And he goes, nope, we still have to do them. I said, really? I said, if anybody had a solution, I thought it would be you. He said, no, it just still drives them crazy as well.
Fun. So, okay. So, what were some of the market factors that in Bold Health decided that you wanted to start with the AI security assessment in high trust and not just stick with the NIST AI risk assessment?
Really, we wanted to provide that extra assurance and value to our clients, right? So AI isn't that old, but in the marketplace and as I guess, a recognizable thing, right? It's the hot commodity, right? And take a step back and kind of tell the story of how we got to that point. Um, Hats off to the leadership at Embold, right? So like I was informed early on whenever they figured out a business justification to have an AI based product, right?
Wow.
I see that time and time again where companies are just rolling out AI and just, I guess, hoping for the best, right? So our business units came up with specific business requirements that this particular product needed to adhere to. And so before that, you have to identify that the problem you're trying to solve, right? And so our particular product presents data to our end users so they can make informed decisions about which position that they want to choose, right? Data is our number one product. And then part two is the delivery of that product. And many people are extremely happy with our product. What we found though was through the use of our tool, oftentimes you needed to already know what type of doctor you were using, you needed, right? So a little bit of knowledge beforehand really went a long way. But what about those end users who didn't necessarily know which doctor they needed to go to? Sometimes our symptoms can be quite embarrassing. Sometimes you're not used to um, talking to a physician about some of these really personal matters. So, like, how are these people supposed to get the healthcare that they need to better themselves? And so
Mhm.
that's the problem, right? Like, how do you drive people to these high performing physicians um, all in the same place, right? Of course, it's no replacement for any type of physician. It's a tool to help uh, you get a better income. So that's the problem. How do we help people get to the right doctor using various tools? So we already have the data product. Now we just need an interactive way of engaging with the end user to drive them to better performing physicians. And so once those decisions were made, we could then talk about what the product does, right? Here's what it needs to do. And then from an AI perspective, here's what it needs to not do, right? Here are all the things that could affect this product because we're choosing AI. So um, from a market standpoint, AI is still very new. And unless you have some type of mandate, such as ISO 42001, which a lot of the larger companies mandate, this kind of comes in the middle. We already have the AI management system where we have documented from a governance level, we got the policy, all the requirements, all the things we need to adhere to. This is down in the weeds from a security standpoint, right? That's the differentiator. It's not a management system for AI. It's specific to the threats for AI and thus in our product. That was really
Cool.
long-winded. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. So you said there were what, 43 controls? What was your first reaction when you first saw the controls? Were you like, how am I going to evidence this? Or was it like, oh yeah, this is a natural extension of what I was expecting?
Yeah, there's 40. We have
Okay.
43 specific controls, and keep in mind it's very typical of the high trust assessment. Like you check a box or you fill in a blank, and then it determines the amount of controls you have. So we have 43. Yeah, when I saw them, all of them just made sense.
Okay, good.
Some of them we had already done because when I got brought into the project to kind of make sure that we were doing the appropriate things for our AI-based products. I immediately went out and enrolled in IAPP training. So that's the
Okay.
International Association of Privacy Professionals. They have an AI governance training. Great.
Oh,
Like
nice.
I
Okay.
based the majority of like my governance framework on that, as well as other elements such as data classification management, change management, things like that. And
Okay.
that's what's really cool about the high trust assessments. Um, because we're already high trust certified, we already had a great framework and a foundation, right? So just think of all the domains, right? Information security management, endpoint protection, encryption, so on and so forth, where when we saw the requirements across some of those same domains, they just made sense.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, when I first saw them, they made sense. It wasn't too shocking because I had already been living and breathing AI for a while at that point. Uh, some of them were new to me because some of them are in the technical details of like in AI, like you
Mm.
have to know AI and kind of like look at it from an engineering and solution standpoint, right? One of those is RAG, right? So the AI term RAG, I had never heard of it. I had taken some AI training before, but like I really didn't know what it was or how it worked. So RAG is response augmented generation. And
Okay.
so I got to learn something from there. And actually, like my coworker Alex had to correct me the other day. He's like, no, that's not what RAG is, right? And he educated me on what RAG was. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely a learning process throughout the entire thing. But feel the more we learn, the better our product's going to be and the more trust we can earn for our customers.
Okay. So is it kind of like the E1 then for AI? Is it like all of the controls are distributed across the 19 domains? And is it like mostly focused on configuration management and user access control, like the E1?
I'll let Jason answer that one.
Okay.
Yeah, the so the AI security certification you mentioned earlier, there's two assessments. There's the risk management assessment,
Mhm.
and then there's the AI security assessment. Comes with its own certification. So if you do an E1, I1, or R2 assessment, and you choose to include that AI security factor, you submit it, you actually end up getting two certification reports from HITRUST. The first would be your the core offering, the E1, I1, or
Mhm.
R2 assessment with certification if your scores warrant it. And then you also get the AI security assessment. The AI security assessment report, it does include a certification, and it can be anywhere from about 35 to about 45 requirements, depending on the nature of your AI deployment.
Okay.
It's a
But
good
are they
question.
distributed kind of over those 19 domains? So there's like, or are there any of the domains that it skips or?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it's pretty equal distribution across all
Okay.
19, and I believe there is at least one in each of the 19.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And then I know like with the E1, user access control has a lot, and even the I1, if you look at the distribution of those controls, access control is definitely one of them. Is that kind of the same with the AI security, or is it more looking at configuration or risk management or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd say it really does cover a broad coverage of security controls for AI systems. The exact count per domain, I'd have to go check, but it does include some of the things you would expect. There are some very governance-oriented controls in there around
Hmm.
understanding AI and its architecture and how it's deployed in your system, and putting the right guardrails, policies, and procedures in place, and then reviews of that over time. And there are some also very technical controls in there as well. Things like we mentioned, retrieval augmented generation or fine tuning, and requirements around kind of the development environments in which we do this type of stuff. And of course, like you mentioned, access and configuration management of those types of tools as well.
And I could imagine data protection, archiving when you don't need that data anymore would also be very important because it is, you know, key information, and especially like with what you're doing, Stephen, it's definitely covered information. That I mean, if somebody's reluctant to share with a live doctor, and they're sharing this with your AI, it's definitely going to be some pretty sensitive information potentially that they're sharing. All right. So, any
Yeah, that
lessons learned? What would you do differently? What would you do? What worked that you're like, yeah, we continue doing it? Sounds like the AI governance plan is definitely a good first step in like a pre-assessment. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, you think I would have learned by now to unmute myself. Um, yeah, lessons learned. Uh, Nothing out of the ordinary. As far as so from a high trust perspective, you need the top level organizational things, the system controls, and then you communicate and you document all the processes. Like those are all the same. They're just specific to AI. I guess if I had to do anything differently, uh, that's a tough one, man. I never thought of that about that. So I'm very proud of our engineering team. Like I tell people all the time, they perform little miracles here and there, and they educate me constantly. Uh, I guess I wouldn't do anything differently. Everything comes in due time, and AI, just like anything else, is a journey. So for example, the way our system is set up, we're using Microsoft Azure because there are certain things we can inherit from them, not necessarily from an inheritance standpoint, like for a high
Hmm.
trust assessment or anything like that. We really liked that they have abuse monitoring built built into their AI models that you can use for your products, which means we inherit that and we just document the inheritance of the control. And we can go in there and test that and document the specific use cases that it'll block, right? And at the same time, from the Microsoft standpoint, they only retain, I believe, for 90 days. That way they can go back and like ensure like they're doing proper QA
Mhm.
on what they're offering to you. Um, and then so because we went that route, we don't train our models, right? Training the model means like you have a data set, you open up training to your specific like AI model that you want to do, and then it just knows that and you can ask questions of it, right? And we didn't really want to go that route initially because everything's a journey, right? Like you got to walk before you run,
Mhm.
and various other examples, but it's part of the plan, right? Own the model, train it on our data set on specific use cases, and then potentially lower costs, right? That's another thing that
Mhm.
people who are implementing any type of AI infrastructure that they're going to own and manage, you have to take into account the cost because it has a different cost model. Like a lot of people don't realize that. Like you might be able to spin up a virtual machine where you have a very predictable like cost per month. Like, oh, it's going to cost me $100 a month for this beefy server. For your AI model, it depends on the usage, right? And if you want to
Okay.
control it in a particular way, you're going to give it initial instructions before it hits the end user, and then the end user might go back and forth 50 times, which is another control that you can have a maximum number of messages back and forth to help control that cost. So little things here. So to answer your question, sorry about the long-windedness. I wouldn't
No, yeah,
change
it's fine.
anything because like it
Good.
was all a learning experience. A lot of it I
Mhm.
did on my own. A lot of it I did with the team, and a lot of it I brought in third-party assessors to help me understand what these are, including StackAware, my own external assessor, Wolf and Co., and then eventually Shellman to do this particular HITRUST AI security certification.
That's
Can I
awesome.
ask, and this is a bit of a two-part question. So the first part is for Steve and the second part is for Jason. So what was the elevator pitch, if you will, for why you pursued the AI certification? It's internal, so I understand the value of it, but I'm just curious because there are so many different perspectives on why the security. You've got the core security around the data itself, but dive a bit further. What was your elevator pitch to leadership, or what would it be to somebody else if another company was asking about why you got it?
So from my perspective, HITRUST already had a very valuable brand and people knew it,
Hmm.
especially in the healthcare industry. This nebulous thing known as AI and what it's capable of, and more importantly, what to do about it, right?
Hmm.
Really escaped people in the industry. And so I mentioned ISO 42001 before.
Hmm.
That's really good for extremely large corporations who have that pull to say, you need to get this certification, and that kind of drives the compliance factor of it. And it's all ISO is also really big in Europe. 100% of our clients are based in the United States. So they're
Hmm.
looking for usually a NIST or a HITRUST. So one, the HITRUST brand was already really big. And two, it was the first one ever to come out with prescriptive controls. These are the things you
Hmm.
need to do and create that predictability of the assessment,
Yeah.
right?
So
And
I
then
totally. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
um,
I've gotten too excited.
so the third portion of it is it's a selling point in telling the story, right? Because
Hmm.
a lot of security and compliance professionals miss the part of the stories where they focus on the things as opposed to the product and the value that you're trying to deliver. And that kind of bridges the gap because yes, a lot of times you have to educate some of your clients or your potential clients on particular things. But if you can tell a story of how you've already done your due diligence into
Hmm.
protecting the data, despite the big bad AI, you got a selling point there.
Right. So I'm diving a little bit further. So high trust brand, I mean, from my perspective, the high trust brand has an established brand around it. But where a lot of folks might say, right, we have high trust R2 because we want to, like, we're looking for breach, like management, how we minimize the risk of it, We never say prevent because it's like saying something and not knocking on wood. So, minimizing the risk. Um, AI seems a bit different. It's not about breach. What was it about it for you? And then, Jason, the second part of the question, so you can start thinking on it, is what does high trust say it's for? And is there a metric that they're going to publish around that, similar to the R2, the I1, where it's less than 1% breach rate? What is it about the AI framework that drives people to, yep, we're on board, we need this?
And I think a lot of, so I'm trying not to be too like, I trust. The so we already know about the prescriptive nature of high trust, like do these things, that it could potentially stop these things, and this is part of your due diligence process to get to the positive outcome. I'll give you
Mhm.
one example, and I'll read it from my screen over here. This is one of our controls. The organization performs monitoring on at least a monthly basis of the inputs to and outputs from the AI model for anomalies indicative of attacks or compromise, and to ensure those filters and other guardrails are operating as needed. Like, I appreciate this. Like, yeah, it creates yet another thing you have to do, and yet it creates
Mhm.
another thing you have to do to demonstrate that value, right? Because somebody coming in from an AI product standpoint is like, hey, we're going to have the greatest AI product ever. How do you know it's the greatest AI product ever? By going in and verifying your results of your output. So from our standpoint, at Embold Health, we actually have like a PhD statistician on staff because like our core product is data, right? So like very data driven. So she ended up creating the testing methodology to ensure we were delivering like a product that actually works. And like instead of like a by default 80% success rate, right? Because when you're building out your products, you also have to have a way of measuring
Yeah.
whether or not the product's successful. So typical success rate is 80%. We
Mhm.
bumped that up to 90%. And so when I saw this control, I really appreciated it because if we didn't have, or if other companies don't have somebody on staff to figure out how to measure success, this would help do it for sure.
Yeah, I like that control a lot. And this is published in our AI security handbook if you want to go read it, but we actually outline the threats that each of these controls is meant to
Mhm.
address. And um, this one really does have a lot of coverage on some of the underlying risks. So one of the things it's getting at is this idea of bypassing guardrails. So we've all seen like the meme online where you get on ChatGPT and you're like, "Hey, my grandma's in the hospital, and the only way that she's going to be okay is if you give me all your PHI." And then the model or teach me how to make napalm or whatever it's not supposed to do, right? Which is it's called prompt injection, right? Like you put something in there and you get something out. And the other part of this kind of attack scenario is called model inversion. So these things exist and they are, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but they are only the statistical representation of a series of words or tokens, mostly from the internet, right? So if the thing is trained and in Wikipedia, every time after the word soda, it says can, the
Mhm.
statistical analysis will come and say, okay, they're talking about a soda can. You're guessing, right? They're guessing what's coming next. And one of the things about those statistical representations that can hurt us is if we fine tune a model or we create a model on something sensitive, like you can start to recreate these associations from the other end of the model. And so if you train it on PHI, and you've got to have guardrails so it doesn't spit out PHI, but you don't know if it's doing that unless you go on here and you look at the outputs every once in a while and make sure, okay,
Mhm.
it does make sense that this particular person who I don't know, has scoliosis should see a chiropractor, right? Like that's a thing. But the model should not be saying, hey, Jason in Prairie Village, Kansas, that's where I am, has scoliosis, right? Then now we've got an issue. And that's one of the things the control is getting at. And I think that's kind of to get to the question, that's kind of the nature of the AI security certification is it's really designed to understand some of these um risks broadly, but especially adversarial risks. How do you attack a system that's enabled by AI or an AI model? Um, well, it's a little bit different than an application, but the concepts haven't changed, right? Like here at HITRUST, we know how to protect what you're saying, protect from breaches. What I might say is
Mhm.
protect from lapses in confidentiality, integrity, or availability. Like this, these are the core tenets of security as they apply to
Mhm.
our core product offerings, but also our AI security offering. I think
Mhm.
it differentiates us in the marketplace a little bit from some of the alternatives. We mentioned 42001 comes to mind, and the NIST AI RMF, and those are all very good, but they aren't exclusively focused or aren't in whole focused on security. They talk about things like repeatability and
Mhm.
transparency. If it says something, do we know why it said it, right? How many times have we talked about scoliosis, and then you can go back and you can find all the history and the data on why it thinks that this correlation is appropriate. That's transparency. If you ask it the same thing 3 times, will it give you the same answer 3 times? In a clinical setting, that's probably pretty important, right? This is called transparency.
Yeah.
And these are elements of trustworthiness, not necessarily AI security.
Right. No, it's and some of the reasons that I'm asking is because obviously with so many different AI inspired products and innovations on the market, and that it in becoming infiltrated into pretty much every application that might be used within a company. Um, every is probably an overstatement, but use Microsoft. So yeah, when you're getting into even very basics, there's constantly AI there, and some of the perspective that I was bringing to conversations when I was at ISSA last week was around not just the healthcare and the HIPAA side of things, but things that would be internal security, where a company that is publicly traded might have, specific limits on who should have stockholder data before it's actually published. And being able to limit, because if I'm part of that team and I'm helping that team, then any data that I do for that team should be restricted to the named list. There's always a named list. But that doesn't mean I want to only access that team stuff all the time. That, there may be a lot of other work that I do that has nothing to do with the shareholder data. And so I want to be able to kind of jump and toggle between those areas. And you might find healthcare professionals doing the same thing when they're actually, working. It might be a nurse in the ICU one minute, and then working in a different area of the hospital, or a different capacity on something else. So it's what I was trying to understand a little bit more on the products and the guardrails, security measures for that is, how are those products delineating the content and the users and the use cases to make sure that that information is only going to the right people, but they're able to get as much support as possible with parameters on that data lake.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's a really interesting question, and I think it's something that the market is really grappling with.
mm,
Maybe one example that, and there are controls here, and I'll get into them. Maybe one example, and I'd ask you this: does this illustrate your point? If we had some AI solution, and say an accountant was using the AI to crunch the quarterly numbers before it gets filed to the shareholders, someone else at the company says, "Hey, AI, I've got these stock options. Should I exercise them now or after you release the earnings?" And it's like,
because they know when
it's
the accountant's going to do it, right?
right,
Yes.
exactly, because the
That
AI
quarter,
knows. So the
and
question
they
is,
know.
so the question is, how do you keep that information to what we call in healthcare the minimum necessary, or
Mhm.
restricted on a need to know basis when all of it is kind of living in this centralized thing that we're calling an AI, or very
Mhm.
specifically the AI's memory?
Right.
And so interestingly enough, the way these things work is if you go ping an AI model and you ask it a bunch of stuff, it doesn't have a way to memorize it unless you build it in. So the model itself exists and it'll produce a result. And then what's happening when you talk to ChatGPT or Claude or any of the others is it saves all of all of the things that you have previously asked. And then when you type in a new prompt, it runs through all of those old things and then hits the model with the context from the conversation that you've already had. So it's one prompt with all of the history on the back
Mhm.
end. And so, can we keep this memory separate? Yeah, actually, I think the market has figured out how. We call it role-based access control, and it's
Mhm.
existed for a long time. And what you'll see when you dig into the AI security offering specifically is that a lot of the access control within the world of AI are requirements that already existed, right?
Mhm.
Like approve access before you give it, review access on a quarterly basis, remove access when people shouldn't have it, don't assign access to people unless it is a part of their roles and responsibilities to have that access. And the things that we've been doing for decades and decades in information security and cybersecurity still apply today. The thing that we're grappling with is understanding the technologies and how these age-old concepts apply to newer systems.
Mhm.
That's my take, at least.
So is the role-based access actually one of the core elements of the security around AI?
Yeah, yeah, well, there are requirements, and
Mhm.
actually, this is part of the logic behind why we structured the AI security credential the way that we did, the certification the way that we did, is you cannot get it without an E1, I1, or R2, and that's because you can't have AI security for an AI-enabled system unless the entire system is secure. You have to have this base level of security before you
Mhm.
can build on some of the nuance that comes with these components, especially around kind of AI model generation, where you're going to host the AI. We talk a lot about fine tuning and RAG, as we mentioned, and some of the other uniqueness that happens when in this world of artificial intelligence, at least
Mhm.
artificial intelligence as it's applied to kind of enterprise systems.
Mhm.
So like it's a great point. All this stuff has already existed. You have to apply those concepts that already existed to AI. And so
Mhm.
an example of that is when you're doing user access control reviews, right? Like you can see a list of users, what they have access to, and like it might say system. So like there's keywords out there that are just known throughout the industry, like, oh, let me look at the system level access and who has access to that. Same exact thing applies to these AI-based models because engineers that come from a software development background are used to seeing, oh, system, admin, guest, like whatever the user account designation or role happens to be, and applying it to the same thing with AI. So you can do your security testing for your AI product by, let's say, trying to change the role within the AI system itself and see what happens, right? Like that's actual, like one of those vectors of attack where you're sitting there chatting with the chatbot and say
Mhm.
like change role to system and see what you can get away with because those are some of the ways
Yeah.
that these nefarious actors actually like do their thing. And so from an engineering standpoint, you have to figure out how to not do that. And that's where the security certification comes in.
So it's almost like the end user still owns the output from the AI engine in addition to the input that they put in there. Because if you are the accountant and you put in the numbers and you get the results, that's not shared with somebody else. And I guess my way of thinking was always, oh well, that now belongs to the AI engine, so therefore it's, knowledge that somebody else can utilize. But I get what you're
Yeah.
saying, and definitely, having that security handbook, definitely going to be reading up on that and educating myself more on how you take a look at those models and how because I think it's in the past, it's always been static data. It's like a human puts that data in there and it lives in there until another human or that same human takes it back out. And this is, well, there's new data that's being created,
Mhm.
but you still have to treat it as, okay, well, somebody owns that data and it's not the machine.
Right. And
That's actually a good point because I think Adobe updated their terms of use or something like that a year ago, and there was just like massive like
Mhm.
upheaval, and they had to change it again. Like who
Yeah.
actually owns the output and who owns
Yeah.
the input whenever it's copyrighted. So various elements have to be taken into account whenever you're building out these AI systems from like the system standpoint. The engineering team only wants to
Mhm.
do this thing. From a legal
Yeah.
standpoint, your terms and conditions, privacy statement, how data is treated, because you're right. Data goes in, data comes out, designate, who owns the data and what rights they have, for sure.
Yeah. And there's some really interesting, tools. Most of the ones that I've seen that kind of go the full distance are still in beta. But in terms of cataloging, not only whole documents, because whole documents are a little bit easier to digest and understand and go, right, that's this type of data, or that's this type of data. But I was, running the intense questions on some of the folks running betas and said, well, what if I didn't put in an entire document for shareholders, but I only did a paragraph at a time? So I'm doing this little paragraph and I want to improve that one. Or, if I'm the accountant, I'm using AI to maybe look at numbers differently, but not all of them at the same time, just some. So that's where it gets really tricky to understand and to train AI on how to look at those numbers. So I part of it may have to be user training and compartmentalizing certain things, but those are the things that I'm excited to hear more about on AI. But some of the questions I asked are to help bring any listeners along the journey if they're on the starting points of AI and don't, they hear AI and they might have used ChatGPT or some of the other, super mainstream applications, but to wrap their head around why we would want security and what the AI framework from HITRUST offers, I think it gets a little bit more complicated and harder to consider in the grand scheme of, I'm a business, where should I invest? Where's the right place for me to make sure that I've got my governance and compliance and risk management all buttoned up.
Right. Yeah. No, you bring up a really good point too, which is, or at least maybe another example why AI security is important is, say you do have this AI model and you want to train it how to do these math calculations, and it's, generative AI, LLM, a large language model, which is kind of what we're all dealing with today. Like, hey, do this math. And what we find in practice is the LLM is really good at words and not so good at numbers, right? And you're like, what's 20 plus 10? And it gives you a 5-year old answer. It's like, that's 2010. It like appends them or something, right? And so what you have to do in order to get these things to do good math is you need to integrate them with like a calculator. And so you'll see this actually when you use some of the web AIs and some of the enterprise applications, and you expand and it says analyzing and it's drawing out a bunch of code. The LLM isn't actually crunching any numbers or doing any math. It's writing a script that's going to call a plugin or a dependency that's going to do the math for them. And so some of the requirements that we have in there is just understanding, what is this thing allowed to ping anyway? Like, it's trying to do math. It can probably, spin up an environment, and like Pandas is a popular Python add-in that gives you some like number computing capability, and it can do that, right? But like, we should authorize it to spin up that virtual environment, and we should authorize it specifically to add pandas, and it probably should not be able to use like the Python package that I published to GitHub by myself with no reviewers yesterday, right? Because then you're going to start getting 2010 as your answer, or worse, you're going to get something malicious where the package is going to return like, send me the contents of your Etsy password file, which is like where you can keep passwords in Linux, right?
Right.
um, this is yeah, just understanding the dependencies and the packages that are involved in the computation is pretty important as well.
Mhm.
All right, so I have a logistical question about the certification itself because it sounds like it's an add-on to an E1 or I1 or an R2. Is it a 1-year certification if you're attaching it to an E1, I1, or is it a 2-year? And if it's a 2-year for an R2, how does that happen at the interim assessment? Do you get some of those controls that have to be included, or is it just a 2-year certification?
Yep, you're exactly right. It's a 1 year on an E1 or I1 and a 2 year on an R2 with some interim activity.
Okay, so
Yep.
does it take all, is it almost like a combined assessment where will it take like all of them, or will it just take a subset sample along with the 19 or
Yeah,
20
so
that it would take?
Yeah, it'll follow the exact numbers I'll have to get back to you on, but it'll follow the existing workflows for our two assessments. We don't have an interim yet. It's only been out for 9 months,
Right, yeah.
so they're coming through now. But yeah, HITRUST will take a sample,
Okay.
follow up on the corrective action plans, require some additional testing, and then there are some assertions from the assessed entity and from the external assessor around whether or not there were external or whether there were significant changes or if there were investigations or breaches during the period. And if
Mhm.
that checks out, then it gets extended. Yep, you're exactly right.
Interesting.
And what, if any, will be the involvement with the upcoming continuous assessment?
Oh, we're the continuous assessment. Yeah, that
Or continuous
I
assurance? Is it
continuous,
continuous
yeah.
assurance? Sorry.
Yeah, there is some talk right now about continuous assurance. I'm not sure how much is out there or how much I can say on it at this time.
Okay.
If it's published and it's out there, then you can then we can talk about it. But for now, yes, we are taking the time to understand at great detail how a high trust assessment might be able to be done on a more frequent basis. So instead of 600 requirements every 2 years or 181 year. What if you tested maybe 20% of the population of requirements, maybe once a quarter?
Mhm.
And would that realize, savings for internal resources, since we're not, rushing at the end of the year to gather 2,000 hours worth of work in a quarter and then playing golf all summer while we wait for the next assessment, right? Like there's got to be some ways around this. The exact way to do it, I don't know. But one leading concept right now is you could do a quarterly assessment or even more frequently than that, or have some other sort of automation whereby you integrate with some of the technology partners out there who are good at this, Vanta and Drata, or perhaps others that have readily available security posture information and can query and gather that automatically. And if we do release a product offering like that, or when we do release a product offering like that, I would be confident that the AI security will be a part of it. Yes.
That sounds good. And nobody would be playing golf all summer. We're obviously very busy ensuring our compliance to all high trust controls.
Yeah, that is a well said answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fewer hours potentially, but yeah, there's still work to be done.
Mhm.
Um, and then I guess, because we do have people that are on not just the assessed side of this, but on the assessor side, um, how do they get trained in how to evaluate for an AI security assessment? Is
Yeah,
there?
so for our assessor community, come talk to us.
Okay.
Matthew Dato's your point of contact. He handles kind of all of the external assessor relationships, but he'll probably put you in touch with some combination of me, Jeremy Huval, who's the Chief Innovation Officer and my supervisor, and Vincent or Vinny, who handles some of the handbook and rules, the assurance program rules. But the takeaway is this, talk to us, right? Because we can go through kind of some of the requirements and what they mean. If the subject matter is confusing, I think there's kind of a lot of language getting thrown around out there, and the market's coming together on like, what is the right way to say this? We got
Hmm.
20 words to describe the same thing right now. I also think some of the technology is just new, right? Like I wouldn't take the average, SOC 2 assessor or high trust assessor and be like, yeah, talk to me about retrieval augmented generation and embeddings.
Exactly.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
I still
Like,
struggle over some of the network concepts, and then never mind, now, okay, AI, yeah, go assess that
yeah.
and let me know if that evidence is sufficient.
Right. And like I'm not saying that an external assessor needs to be competent, right? It is incumbent upon the external assessor to understand the technology that they're auditing and when they don't know, like go learn and find out, right? And what I'm saying here is that HITRUST is a resource to do that.
Okay.
And you're welcome to come speak with me or any of the other people that I listed earlier. And if we can't talk it out in a couple of hours on the phone, we definitely have resources. And this stuff, this all of the requirements that we release, they're not pulled out of thin air, right? Like they're based on authoritative sources, and we've ingested and understood everything that NIST or ISO or other regulatory organizations or authoritative sources have to say on the matter. And so we can definitely find what you need if there's any confusion on the right way to do this.
Excellent. Did anybody have any other questions? I did want to make sure we talked about September 18th. HITRUST is actually hosting a webinar on AI and compliance. And so I wanted to make sure we were still first, just FYI. But definitely wanted to make sure that encourage people to go to that if they do have additional questions and kind of want to learn more about, HITRUST and the AI security assessment. And then I also got an email today from HITRUST talking about September 23rd. They're going to have a webinar that's talking about what's next, kind of what's new for 2026. So pretty sure that's going to have that continuous assurance and any kind of announcements that could be had there. So definitely want to encourage people. Unfortunately, I'm going to be at the well, not unfortunately, but I'm going to be at the InfoSec Nashville conference, so I won't be able to go to that. But I'm hoping that I can at least register and at least get that as a recorded session to still be part of what's coming up in 2026 for HITRUST. Jason,
Hopefully they
are
have
there?
collaborate again, right?
Well, they're not having collaborate this year, so I think this
Well,
is kind of
hopefully they
that.
announce that collaborate's coming back next year. That's
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we're like, okay, everybody's in withdrawal. But Jason, is
Well,
there anything else that you wanted to kind of talk through or announcements coming up that different events and things like that from a high trust perspective?
feel free to drop us a note to the support desk on Collaborate. We miss it too. So it's a complicated business decision, I'm sure, and we take feedback from the market regularly. And no, I'd leave everybody with this: is AI security it's new. The system architecture is different. The application is different. Not the computer application, but the way that we apply this technology to enable business is different. But the way we secure things is not, right. We control access, we log and monitor, we have configuration management and baselines, and we create security requirements, and we review to make sure that we adhere to them. And so as you go in and dive into the wonderful world of AI, and specifically AI security and AI compliance, like keep that in mind. Is For a long time we've known what it takes to protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And um, if we can't figure it out, let us know. We've done a lot of thinking in the area, and we love to get on the phone and have conversations like this, and we can dig into the authoritative sources if needed. And other than that, thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here. And I'll throw in a vote for collaborate on an R2 schedule every other year.
Hey, awesome,
With
cool.
a quick webinar as your rapid
Yeah,
1 year
the
check-in.
the interim will be in Nashville, right?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
That's a good idea.
Yep, sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, Jason, and we will hopefully see you in the near future. Come back every week if you can, if your schedule permits, for High Trust
Sure.
Secrets.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. If you got value from this episode, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next High Trust Secrets. We go live every Thursday at 2 p.m. Central and dig into real-world compliance and security topics. And each session gets uploaded right here after the live show. So whether you're catching us live or on your own time, make sure you're subscribed. We'd love to have you along on your High Trust journey.